Good evening. I'd like to call our board meeting to order and ask the treasurer to call the roll.
President Baker.
Present.
Mr. Brown.
Here.
Vice President Paul.
Present.
Ms. Gibbs.
Here.
Ms. Hudson. Mr. Peretti. Ms. Reyes.
Here.
You have a quorum, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. I'm going to ask Boy Scout Robbie Roush to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance tonight. He's here working on a merit badge. He's required to observe a meeting of a public body, and he's actually the son of our Government Affairs Supervisor, Eric Roush. Thank you for being here. So everyone, please be upstanding. Robbie?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Scout Roush. We appreciate it. And thank you, Dr. Roush, for allowing him to do that this evening. So welcome to everyone for being here tonight. We certainly do appreciate your participation in the meeting, and I'd like to quickly read through our agenda so everyone knows the work we have before us. We will have a special recognition of Women's History Month, which I think we're all looking forward to. We will then take public comment if there is anyone signed up to provide testimony this evening. We will then hear from the board's 3 direct reports with anything they have to share. We will then take up a resolution related to our Safer Together initiative, after which we will ponder our consent agenda. Following that, we will hear announcements from the board, after which we will adjourn into executive session. So having said that, the chair will entertain a motion that we adopt the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Treasurer?
President Baker.
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Vice President Cole.
Yes.
Ms. Gibbs.
Yes.
Ms. Reyes.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you very much. Now, this is Women's History Month, so in honor of that, we have 2 special recognitions this evening. I would like to, first of all, invite up Principal Stephanie Patton and Assistant Principal Rhoda Arrington from the Columbus City Preparatory School for Girls, and they have some young ladies with them, and I would like to ask them to come and assemble right here, the young ladies. And Principal and Assistant Principal, if you'd like to speak at the mic and tell us what's going to happen, or if you'd like to come up with the girls, whatever you prefer. Thank you.
So we are Columbus City Preparatory School for Girls, established 2010, and we have some young ladies here today to honor just some women in history, and they want to share their knowledge with you and just say thanks for being an inspiration to them. So they've just prepared a brief presentation for you at this time.
Hello, everybody. We're Columbus City Preparatory School for Girls. My name is Christianaya.
I'm Taylor.
I'm Demaya. I'm Shaylan.
When women support each other, incredible things happen.
I am Malala, Pakistani activist for female youth and education.
I'm Eleanor Roosevelt, activist for African American and Asian Americans.
I am Mother Teresa, Roman Catholic nun and missionary, founder of Missionaries of Charity, and holder of the 1979 Nobel Peace Prize.
I am Ramona Reyes, advocate for quality education and the first Hispanic elected into the Columbus City School Board.
I am Amina, Queen of Zaria, the first woman to become queen in the 15th century and create her own government in Africa.
I'm Yara Shahidi, an African American activist, model, and actor who attended Harvard University.
I am Elizabeth Blackwell, notable as the first woman to receive a medical degree in the United States and the first woman on the General Medical Council.
I am W. Shauna Gibbs, Columbus City School Board member who created the Shirley Chisholm Conference for Women in Government and the Morning for Hope Teen Suicide Prevention.
All of these women have had a huge impact on the opportunities that young women have today in our society.
Educate a girl and she can change the world.
Another round of applause for the young ladies. Thank you, Principal Patton. Thank you, Assistant Principal Arrington. It's brilliant young ladies, obviously, but it's all about leadership in the school building. So thank you very much for all you do. And obviously, they have some awesome teachers as well. So a lot to be thankful for. Any parents here of those young ladies tonight? We want to recognize them if they are. Any teachers here of those young ladies tonight? Thank you very much for being here and for bringing them. All right, at this time, I would like to turn it over to W. Shauna Gibbs to introduce some other special ladies who are here with us this evening. Ms. Gibbs.
Absolutely. Thank you, President Baker. To continue our recognition of Women's History Month, tonight we have the privilege and the honor to recognize an outstanding sorority that was founded on January 13th, 1913. Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, the Columbus, Ohio Alumni Chapter, has continued to serve the Central Ohio area for more than 82 years. They are a critical force in our volunteer service area, and they provide sisterhood, scholarship, and service to empower our community. Just as you saw the young ladies from our girls' school, we have many notable members of Delta Sigma Theta. Here you see pictured from last year, Dr. Alexa Kennedy, the first African-American woman to become a pediatric neurosurgeon at the age of 26. During her time here in the community, she was able to visit Columbus City Preparatory School for Girls and pose there with some of our other administrators and members of our staff. She spent time with Columbus City Preparatory School for Girls, inspiring them to achieve the highest levels in academic service. We serve tons of people in the community, and I'm not going to do all the speaking as we have our president, Ms. Deborah Pickens, who will be here to share her remarks. But there is a tremendous amount of work that goes on in the community. Through our 5-point programmatic thrust, which she will share, we are very proud that so many members of not just the education community, but almost every field of endeavor is represented in our sorority ranks. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Ms. Deborah Pickens, who is the president of the Columbus, Ohio Alumni Chapter, to share a few remarks.
Thank you so much for having us. The Columbus, Ohio Alumni Chapter is just one chapter out of 1,000 chapters of Delta Sigma Theta globally. The sorority has chapters in the U.S. Virgin Islands and, of course, in the U.S., in Korea, England, Japan, Bahamas, Bermuda. So we are global with over 200,000 members initiated into our sorority. We provide scholarships. We support the underserved. We educate and stimulate participants in public policy, as well as highlighting issues and providing solutions to the communities that we focus on, which are primarily African American. Most of our deltas are actually in the education field as counselors, teachers, school administrators, and professionals. As for, Sister Gibbs, she is a member of our sorority. We serve the community in our 5-point programmatic thrust: educational development, economic development, international awareness and involvement, physical and mental health, as well as political awareness and involvement. Our educational development thrust is the reason why we're here today. So just briefly, I wanted to share with you 3 of our national areas that we advocate for. 1, ending the push-out disciplinary practices in schools. That's a national initiative. As you know, African American girls are suspended, have out-of-school suspensions at a higher rate than white girls. We try locally to impact that through our programming, Delta Gyms, Delta Academy, as well as Alexis Kennedy Conference and our Shirley Chisholm Conference for Girls in Government. The second focus area is preparing males for educational success. And we have a program called Embody, which stands for Empowering Males to Build Opportunities and Develop Independence. We focus on young men ages 14 to 18 and try to prepare them for academic success and really impact the poverty that they may encounter without a great education. Thirdly, we conducting voting rights education for our community. As you know, the African American voter turnout was low in the 2016 election cycle. So part of what we work on nationally and locally is to impact voter education and registration. We are a nonpartisan organization, but we think it's key to educate teenagers and for them to understand what it means to vote, the privilege it is to vote, and then just register them to vote as well. So we've partnered with the League of Women Voters to actually go into the schools. On our calendar already, we have West High School and we have Downtown High School that we will be registering with. So finally, I would like to thank, and I have my thank yous, the entire Columbus City School District for really partnering with us. We use the district's facilities. They help us disseminate our applications for all of our programs, as well as provide us speakers for some of our conferences. I would like to thank the Fort Hays Career Center Dental Program, which hosts our Kennedy Conference, and also to thank Dr. Stanford, the Chief Academic Officer, Gillison, and the entire staff that partners with us on our service to the community. So on behalf of the 256 members of the Columbus, Ohio Alumni Chapter, I thank you for hosting us today. Thank you.
Thank you. So if the members of Delta Sigma Theta would please come forward, which also includes our education director for the city of Columbus, Ms. Rhonda Johnson. If you'll come forward, I will share what is written in our certificate. And I won't read it all, but we do thank you for all of your service and recognizing that women are the growth and strength of our nation, and you have been the leaders to create a more fair and just society for all. And we thank the hundreds of Deltas that are currently and retired, teachers, principals, supervisors, administrators, staff, board members, volunteers, community partners, and parents for positively impacting thousands of Columbus City School students each year. Thank you so much for helping us achieve our spirit of success. Very much. Thank you again to the Deltas for all that they do. And speaking only for myself, I'll say I love the sorors very much. Yeah, we appreciate your service to the district and around the world.
And I do not believe we have anyone signed up to provide public comment this evening. No. So then let's move right into our executive reports. So I will call on our interim superintendent, Dr. Stanford, to provide his report. Dr. Stanford.
Thank you, Board President Baker, members of the Board of Education. Bold actions often begin with bold conversations. Tonight, the administration is asking the board to boldly advance two very important actions that are aimed at making our district stronger in our finances and safer for our students and staff. The first is our bold effort to address future financial shortfalls today instead of waiting until the future when it might be too late. Before the board this evening, we have our first set of final proposed budget reductions to address the anticipated out-year deficits in our 5-year financial forecast. For more than 3 months, going back to Thanksgiving, the leadership team here at the district has been working on efforts to address these anticipated deficits. We started with projections of an $89 million deficit in the 4th year of the forecast, which we've now moved to $39 million in the black. And we have nearly cut in half a more than $300 million gap in year 5. Let me tell you, it has taken bold conversations to get us here, because, as many of us have said, every investment we make as a district has value for our students. But we recognize that priorities must be set and reductions must be found when the state fails to provide full funding for education. Last week at the special meeting of the board, the administration offered a number of changes to our original list of proposed budget reductions, which would go into effect during next school year, which is the 2018-2019 school year. We took to heart and mind the input and insight provided to us by the board and by all of our stakeholders who came to our 4 community forums and offered their comments online and by email. We have thoroughly reviewed the list of potential reductions with an intense focus on personnel's decisions with that feedback. Because we have a fast approaching deadline for our teacher and staff allocation process for next school year, we are here this evening to move forward with the personnel reductions. In fact, the initial phase of that process for the teacher and staff allocation started yesterday. Tonight, the board will be asked to approve the list of 61 FTE full-time equivalent positions that will be reduced as a part of our plan. This 61 FTEs is a change from the 163.5 FTE positions originally on our list back in January. This initial list of 61 FTE is a mix of positions including certificated and classified staff. Our hope is that a significant number of these reductions will be accomplished through our normal attrition. At our next meeting, we will have additional personnel reductions within our administrative ranks. Each of these personnel reductions were identified as having the least amount of impact on our services to our students and their families. But they will be felt across the district. In the coming months, we will further advance our non-personnel reductions as a part of the traditional budgeting process that we have here in the district. Again, we will have to engage in additional bold conversations about how we fulfill our responsibility to best manage the limited resources of this district. Before I get to the other bold conversation on our agenda tonight, I want to mention another item of note. the board will consider for adoption this evening the traditional school year calendar for the 2018-2019 school year. At our next meeting, the board will consider the adoption of the year-round calendar for Woodcrest Elementary School for the next school year. You will recall that in our budget conversations last Wednesday night, we, the administration, recommended maintaining Woodcrest as a year-round program for next school year. I know that many of our families and our community members are anxiously awaiting these calendars. We will make sure, board members, that they are posted on our website for all to share and read. Finally, when it comes to the level of violence and trauma in our community, I am compelled to quote one of our great civil rights leaders and a patriotic American as we celebrate Women's History Month. The magnificent Fannie Lou Hamer once said, "I am sick and tired of being sick and tired." That, ladies and gentlemen, is how I feel about the level of community and gun violence in our nation and local community. I want to commend and applaud the Board of Education for continuing this bold conversation, which started a year and a half ago as we grappled with rising concerns about gun violence in our local neighborhoods. It was made clear in those special board work sessions that safety was and still is today a fundamental priority that we do and that we exercise in Columbus City Schools. For all that we have done as a district to improve school security and promote a more supportive and safer culture within our buildings, the dangers arising in our neighborhoods were and still are having very real and direct effect on the emotional and social climates in our classrooms and our hallways. The board clearly said that when it comes to keeping this community's young people safe, none of us can do it alone. We have to work together. Move forward a year and a half later to tonight, and those same concerns about the safety and security of our children are now national as a result of what happened in Broward County. And the board's message that none of us can do it alone has transformed into our passionate message over the last 2 weeks that we are safer together. We are safer when all work together to prioritize safety and security. We are safer when we act together to protect one another. And we are safer when we speak out together about the need to end gun violence now. When we let our collective voices rise up to share our collective pain, frustration, and anger that something is not being done to protect our babies when other countries have found a way and they are making it happen to protect their babies. Next week, this board and our students have an opportunity to be heard and to have a leading voice in this community and be a part of a growing chorus of school districts across this nation who share in the belief that enough is enough when it comes to gun violence and the deadly impact it is having on our young people and on our schools. I deeply appreciate that this board will consider a resolution this evening to declare March the 14th as Safer Together Day in Columbus City Schools. On that day, every school in this district will have educational, inspiring, and thought-provoking activities planned around the premise of Safer Together. The day coincides with the Youth Empower National School Walkout movement, when students, teachers, and staff members across this entire nation will express plans to walk out of their classrooms at 10 o'clock a.m. for 17 minutes. The 17 minutes represents the 17 young lives lost in the tragedy in Broward County, Florida, a few weeks ago. As a strong believer in the First Amendment, our leadership teams are already working on how best to support our students and staff members who choose to participate in the walkout and express their right to free speech and to have their voices heard on this important issue. At the same time, we are working with them to express an experiential educational opportunity. We want all of our students to be a part of this historic moment. We know that not every school will have students who will participate in the walkout. In fact, that's probably not even practical when we think about our elementary buildings. So every building will create, as a part of Safer Together Day, activities such as See Something, Say Something, or conversations on social isolation and bullying, or perhaps the notion that no one eats alone at lunch, or encouraging students to say a kind word to 17 other students who they normally would not talk to. These are only a few of the ideas that came from a student focus group that was led by our Chief Academic Officer, Alicia Gillison, that met a couple of weeks ago when our students expressed to everyone that we all have value, that we all belong, and that no one should feel alone and isolated in Columbus City schools. We want all of our students to have an opportunity to be a part of this bold conversation about their lives and their futures. We want them to be a part of the bold efforts right now in securing an environment where we all can stand together, safer together. Our team will be sharing more details about Safer Together Day through the coming weeks as schools finalize their plans on this momentous day. Again, I commend and applaud this board for continuing to lead this bold conversation on school and community safety in the city of Columbus, and for demanding bold action locally and nationally from those that have the responsibility and the obligation to do something about this epidemic, and for approving this bold resolution that reaffirms we in Columbus City Schools truly are safer together. Thank you, Mr. President and members of the Board of Education. That is my report this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. We appreciate your report. And are there questions from board members for Dr. Stanford on his report? If not, thank you very much, Dr. Stanford. We appreciate that very much. Let's move on then to our Internal Auditor. Madam Internal Auditor, have you anything to share with the board this evening?
Yes, I do. Thank you, President Baker, Vice President Cole, members of the board. On February 22nd, the Auditor of State provided the Audit Committee and Administration an update on the district's financial statement audit for the year ending June 30th, 2017. As the report has not been issued, I cannot go into specifics, but I can share that progress has been made in decreasing report comments and management letter comments. I would also like to give a shout out to Dr. Michelle Klein, and the accountability team for the complete elimination of any findings or comments related to student enrollment numbers. The Office of Internal Audit has worked with management as they draft the corrective action plans and responses to the management letter and responses to the management letter are ready to be forwarded to the Auditor of State. A final meeting with the Auditor of State will be held later this month and the report released thereafter, and I will keep the board fully informed as we progress through this process. President Baker, this concludes my report.
Thank you, Madam Internal Auditor, for that report. Any questions from board members for the Internal Auditor this evening? Thank you for sharing that good news. We appreciate the update. Mr. Treasurer, have you a report for the board this evening?
Mr. President, I have just an announcement and a reminder that on Thursday the 15th, the Finance and Appropriations Committee will meet at 4 p.m. in this room, as we do on the Thursday in between each board meeting. So, and we'll have our typical agenda with the financial reports, recap of some budget and budget timeline items as we proceed down the road of looking at the budget for fiscal 19.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. Any questions for the Treasurer? Thank you. All right, that concludes our executive reports, and at this time I'd like to call on the Vice President to offer a motion related to the Safer Together discussion.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's recommended that the board adopt a resolution declaring March 14, 2018 Safer Together Day throughout the Columbus City School District. Provided that our interim superintendent, Dr. Stanford, set such a powerful narrative around what the purpose of this is for, I'd like to just read 3 whereas clauses that adopt, or that speak to our commitment as a board to this issue, and our be it resolved 3 sections of that as well, if I may. Whereas this Board of Education, it is the bottom 3 whereases on the front page. Whereas the Board of Education believes that ensuring that our schools are safe and welcoming for all students and their families will facilitate the physical safety and emotional well-being of all children in the district as paramount to our students' ability to achieve. And whereas safety is fundamental priority in all that we do in Columbus City Schools, and we are safer when we work together to prioritize safety, when we act together to protect one another, and when we speak out together about the need to end gun violence. And whereas the board recognizes that one of the district's greatest safety resources is the trusted relationships that have been built between our students, families, staff, and safety teams, encouraging students to speak up anytime they see a potential threat to another student, themselves, or to the greater school community. On the back page, the last be it resolved. Now be it resolved, therefore be it resolved that the Columbus City School Boards of Education declares March 14, 2018 as Safer Together Day throughout Columbus City Schools, and be it therefore resolved that the board publicly supports similar resolutions endorsed by the Council of Great City Schools and the Ohio School Boards Association, and be it therefore resolved that the board will call upon the Ohio Legislature and the U.S. Congress to provide school districts with the tools and resources necessary to fully support our students and their safety, as well as provide for new common sense gun controls that can aid in reducing access to deadly weapons. And be it further resolved that the board calls upon all of its partners in public, private, and nonprofit sectors to stand with us and make us safer together by joining in our efforts to prioritize and provide safe, supportive, and thought-provoking learning spaces for all of the students of Columbus City Schools. Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Moved and seconded. Is there discussion on the resolution before us? Mr. Brown.
Yeah. Yeah, I do have some comments and thoughts. In fact, I'm going to present this in terms of an amendment that I'm going to propose, and that is that we adopt the resolution but move the activities to a different date that the administration can work out. Let me explain my rationale. Something that I know I've already shared with all of you, and I've had the opportunity for an extensive conversation with Dr. Stanford, and I appreciate that. This date of March 14th was initially selected not by our administration, but by students in Parkland, Florida. Students who had survived a horrible tragedy. And this event that they had planned for March 14th nationally, working with the Women's March Youth Empowerment Group to help organize it, is entirely student-conceived, student-led, student organized, and they had a message, they have a message that pertains specifically on stopping gun violence. They have said repeatedly to the public, and they've been heard to some extent across the country, more effectively than anything I can remember in my lifetime, that adults have failed, whether it's the General Assembly here in Ohio or in Florida, whether it's Congress, that we have all failed and students want something done. And they conceived the notion of doing a walkout, a student walkout on March 14th. Our choosing the same date, our choosing to step on their message, as I see it, and when I first read this plan, that's how I read it, I think it dilutes their message, I think it preempts their message, and it takes over the day in a way that I don't think is appropriate. I believe that we should respect our students. Importantly, that we should listen to our students and students across the country on this issue. There have been some very articulate and eloquent speakers. Emma Rodriguez is one that particularly has impressed me. And we should set aside our plans for that day and allow the students to do what they need to do, with us giving respect and support, and very importantly, working to keep them safe. And I don't think that these messages are mutually exclusive, but I think that our doing these activities at that time will minimize and dilute what our students have to say. I liked very much the planned activities. I don't want to take anything away from that, but I really and strongly believe that this is something that we should do on another day, and we should probably make some plans to continue some of the activities that may be initiated on such a day on an ongoing basis. See something, say something has been, widespread for a long time, but it's incredibly important. The reporting of potential issues is incredibly important. And we have to make sure we have good plans in place to allow that to happen. But with those comments, I would move that we approve the amendment, approve the resolution, but ask that administration reassign it to another day.
So thank you, Mr. Brown. So your amendment that you're offering is that we choose a different day for Safer Together Day. All right, so we do have a motion before us. An amendment has been offered. If it is not seconded, we won't take it up. If it is, we will, and we'll have discussion specific to the amendment. Is there a second? Hearing none, we thank you for offering the amendment. All right, any further discussion on this particular resolution before us, board members? Board Member Gibbs.
Just want to not only thank the administration for providing an opportunity for our young people to be involved. And I do believe that it's a national walkout day, Safer Together Day. It's a time for Columbus City to be a part of something bigger than what's right here. And I'm glad Florida is making a platform where they're making their messages known, and our students will have an opportunity to then be a part of something bigger and something national. My challenge is that we have to have it at all. the epidemic of violence in our community is absolutely tremendous, whether it is on our school buildings or in our communities. I just hope our students, and really encourage them to take advantage of the opportunity to share, and hope that you will provide that opportunity. Many of them write us and they send us emails and we answer them. And so just continue to encourage our students to speak out. And what I ask of the administration is that you make sure our teachers and our staff are trained to receive the comments, and that we have a plan. And I'm looking at Ms. Sherworld shaking her head like, you know, we got this. But just to make sure that we don't make it a one day, and that our students continually feel open and comfortable to continue to share, and want to thank all of those students again who do the right things. And thank you for all of those who have said something, that saw something, and want to thank all of our staff that are continually there to help and support our kids.
Thank you, Ms. Gibbs. Mr. Vice President, and then Ramona Reyes, and then MJ Hudson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be very brief. I'll say that the time is now. The time is now for us to stand and first and foremost listen to our children. I'm a parent in this district. I hear my children come home and tell me what their thoughts of their own safety or not, what their perceptions of their school district are, and what, more importantly, their community. And like many of our children in this district, they feel very much a part of this community and want to contribute to it on a daily basis. The time is now to seize the moment for our own opportunity to adopt a resolution that's not just about this school district, but about our partnerships throughout this entire city, about our collective committedness to safety and nonviolence, and restoring a power of voice and action to people who need it the most. Us in this room, our children without this room, and our community in every house and every neighborhood throughout the city. The time is now. The time is now. I couldn't be more proud. I couldn't be more proud, as saddened as I am, to stand with our children, with our babies, at a time to say that we're going to take our community back, we're going to take our neighborhoods back, we're going to do it in partnership with the police, with our firefighters and other first responders, with our neighbors, with our school teachers, with our custodians, with our lunch workers, with everybody in this community that considers himself a Columbusonian. I want to make sure that we are supporting this initiative today. I couldn't be more proud. Brothers and sisters, colleagues at this table, the time is now. I thank you.
Thank you, sir. Board Member Reyes.
So I just want to also say thank you, Ms. Gillison, thank you for bringing our children together. When we're talking about, are we listening to our kids, what do they want? And what I heard from the comments was, we talked to our children, they came up with these ideas, and we're giving them a space and a platform to do what they choose to do. I don't believe that we're asking and we're going to be saying, this is what you have to do. I believe what I heard was we're giving each of our buildings the opportunity to make their own plans and decide how they want to carry that out. I also, when we were discussing this, looked up which schools in our area are picking or have signed up on the website to do the walkout. And from our district, there's only one school. And there's only a handful of schools on the website, on the official website that I'm looking at right now, only has one school registered on their website, on the National Walkout website. So I don't know if anyone's looked at that. But there's currently only one school and the other one's not ours. So I'm not going to mention them. Just kidding. And there's a map of some of the other schools that are participating. But I too, like Board Member Cole, have a daughter who is in a district where they had to shut down 3 times. The first time, she was scared. And when you get that phone call, when your child is scared, it scares you. So that's why it's important to us because we live it and we breathe it. It is not something that is superficial to us. When people ask us, why are we on this school board, is because we are absolutely 100% invested. Because I have a daughter in the district, because I have godson in the district, because I have neighbors that I have convinced that they should take and bring their children to Columbus City Schools. So if this will help them voice their opinion, if this will help them join, and then make them, help them understand that we're in this fight with them together, and we're going to do everything possible to hear them, to be with them, and to protect them, then I'm all in. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hudson?
Thank you, President Baker. I guess I wanted to follow up. I just wanted to clarify the date. So the board member Brown, I felt like I had a question, so I want to ask the question. So what does it mean that it's on? I understand that this is the date called, but to board member Brown's point, is it student driven, or is, I mean, what, and I understand, I think it's important to have structured activities as well. So I know I talked to my niece who's in a high school in the region, and she's a freshman, and she said she wanted to walk out, but she was scared to walk out, and because she didn't want to get in trouble. And I said, we're counting on you, walk out. But I think that, I don't know what she's going to do. She said she has health class that day. But I think that that's that time. I think the kids are thinking about it, so I wouldn't want to stop them. But if maybe we could get a little clarification, I would really appreciate that. I don't want to have kids scared also to stand up for themselves. And I like what Dr. Stanford outlined, and also I think it's good what Board Member Brown said to encourage that, you know, self-motivation as well. So,
would you like to offer some words?
Mr. President, to Ms. Hudson, that's exactly what our position is that, you know, we are going to be very supportive of students who want to lift up their voice and, you know, I guess polish up their shoes and walk out. You know, we've been talking about it as a leadership team. Many of us were those kids 20, 30 years ago who were, you know, fighting against injustices in South Africa, who were fighting against injustices in this country. And so we understand what they're going through, and we are just immensely proud, right? Because as Mr. Brown has said, we had Sandy Hook. We had Columbine. This is the first time we've seen anything of action on this issue. And so we think this is an opportunity not only to talk about the gun control issue, because as we know, many of those young people who took that type of sad action were troubled young people. They had been bullied, they had been harassed, or they had been isolated by their other classmates. And so they thought picking up a gun and going to school with that gun and doing those horrible things was the answer to their isolation, their bullying, and their harassment. What we're saying with Safer Together is that that is not the answer. We are here to love you. We are here to wrap our arms around you. We are here to care for you, and we are here to guide you. And so just like your niece, who is, you know, she sees what's going on around her, and she's saying to herself, I want to do something, but maybe I don't want to walk out. We have students in Columbus City Schools who are that way as well. And what we want to do is provide as many different activities that they decide to do. The list of things that we are providing them, those are just a list of ideas. They are free to exercise their First Amendment right any way they see fit. And we're going to support them in doing that, as long as we can help them also to consider safety concerns and safety issues, because we want them to be safe as they exercise this First Amendment right. And so, you know, we are listening to the students. In fact, and I'll let Chief Academic Officer Gillison talk a little bit more about this in her meeting with those young people that day, because we started that meeting talking about the gun violence and what should be done about gun violence. And then I'll let Mrs. Gillison share with us what happened after that.
Thank you, Dr. Stanford, President Baker, and members of the board. The meeting with our young people 2 weeks ago was a very humbling experience. When you talk about listening to our young people, of course they were aware of what happened in Parkland. And then we were talking about, do you feel safe? And it was out of the mouths of our children. And they said, you know what the problem is? The problem is lack of diversity. I was confused. I said, in Columbus City Schools, we're the largest. We have over 9,000 ELL families. What do you mean? They said people are still isolated. Our Somali students eat with the Somali students. Our Nepali students eat with the Nepali students. Our Latinos, our African Americans. They said, Ms. Gillison, can we have a day to break down those barriers? They said, look back at every one of those incidents. Either the people were bullied or they were isolated. And there was one young man, and I will call his name because I could have just hugged the life out of him. His name is Jalen, goes to Marion Franklin. He talked about a young lady with purple hair, and no one speaks to her. And he said, I said, what's going to be different tomorrow, Jalen? He said, tomorrow I'm going to eat lunch with her. I'm going to speak to her. He said, I'm a pretty popular kid, and if I sit with her, other people will sit with her. And then other students said, can we have a day to put academics aside and to start breaking down the barriers, but we want to lead it, and we want the adults in the building to listen to us. So that was the impetus of where we are with Safer Together and designating a day. It is clearly listening to our young people. Thank you.
Mr. Brown, I believe you were next.
Yeah, just a couple points. One, and thank you, Dr. Gillison, for that work and for the continuing work around this. You know, I like it. I know that we need to do more of it. Not to take away from what I had said before, but to Ms. Reyes, there are 4 schools in Columbus City Schools. I'm signed up, Walnut Ridge, Cause. Yeah, you know.
That's all.
One of our elementary schools and 3 of our high schools have all signed up. They all have designated contact people on that website. And to my knowledge, we've not reached out and talked specifically to those 4 people who are perhaps the organizers and leaders, at least the contact people who would be able to identify the leaders and contact people. And that's something that we should do. And to take their views into account. Again, listen to our students. Beyond that, Dr. Stanford, you talked about 20, 30 years ago, you know, walkouts and protests of perhaps this magnitude date back in my mind to 50 years ago. Yeah. And you know, at least, you know, twice that long. And I recall vividly being afraid, being scared. Am I going to get into trouble by walking out? Part of the exercise, part of what this is about is allowing students to experience that feeling of fear. Do they have the courage to stand up for their principles and for what's right in the face of a system, a principal, or a parent who might not like that? And I think that our making it overly easy is not necessarily the best message. We faced consequences in those days. Making it entirely consequence-free may not be the best message. Now, I'm not going to say, you know, that's one that I've been I'm not sure about. But, you know, I think that we have some things to learn from our own past and a lot to learn from our students and our young people. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Mr. Vice President, and then maybe final comment from Ms. Gibbs.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, I want to applaud the administration and our young students, our children in the school district. This is not just an issue of addressing gun violence. What we're seeing happen here, very naturally, is a response to building culture. Young students saying to us that we want to have much more of a voice. We want to be much more efficacious in how we create the kind of culture within a school building that we want. When I talk to my own daughter, who's a school leader at Columbus North International School, about the bullying issue, about any number of things that she as a student may have to face or her colleagues may have to face, the first thing I say to them is, what do you want to do about it? What is the culture you want to see at the school? And then act on it, period. You don't need our permission. But the beauty of this initiative is that we are supporting our children, that we are not making this something that they have to have a threat of punitive action. They should not have to fear from us any reprisal for standing up and exercising not only their right as citizens of this country or human beings, but most importantly, as students who belong to a school, who contribute to that school every day, and want to stand to do something incredibly powerful and positive. How dare us? I'll use this old colloquialism from my Spades days. Study long, study wrong. Some of y'all know what I'm saying. This is not the time to study long and study wrong on this issue, brothers and sisters. This is the time is now, to give our students the platform and the support to do what they know is right and what we know is right. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, sir. Board Member Gibbs.
Yes, and thank you all. Thanks, always inspired by my colleagues and their comments, and to the idea of when these movements began. To our recognition tonight, the very first public act of Delta Sigma Theta sorority that was founded in 1913 was to march in the Women's Suffrage March. And it's never been easy for us to speak up. So we may not have had a social media post. We didn't have Facebook. We had dogs and water hoses. We had losing our jobs and being drug off to jail. So power concedes nothing without demand. And so we are empowering our young people to demand justice from those who will not act in their behalf. So not just is it timely today, it didn't take them 30 days. We can learn a lot from children. It does not take them long at all. And I just really appreciate it and will say we will not, when history turns this page, we will not stand in the face of progress. So thank you for helping them and encouraging them, because we will not get in their way. Thank you, President Baker. And I move the question.
Very good.
We call the question.
Would you allow a correction, a quick correction?
Okay.
Mr. Brown, a quick correction.
There is now one additional school that has signed on. So there is 4 high schools: Cos, Walnut Ridge, Centennial, and South, and 1 elementary school, the Broadley School.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Brown. All right. Thank you for that good discussion, colleagues. And we do have a vote before us. Mr. Treasurer?
All set?
Ready.
Mr. Brown?
Yes, with the exception of the date.
I'm not sure how to record that, but
I don't either, but you'll figure something out.
Vice President Cole?
Absolutely, yes.
Ms. Gibbs?
Absolutely, yes.
Ms. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Peretti?
Yes.
Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
And President Baker?
Yes.
That motion carried.
Thank you. Thank you very much, colleagues. Thank you. Let's move on to contemplating our consent agenda. Is there a motion that we adopt it as it's been presented?
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Is there discussion, colleagues, on any piece of legislation contained this evening? Mr. Peretti.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to, quickly point out we've had a lot of meetings, a lot of interaction with the community, getting great feedback on, unfortunately what we have to do in light with the state's reduction of funds to the school district. Sadly, we have to make these cuts. They're all very important to this district. And, we started at a larger number, but we understand that we have to be careful as we move forward with this. There are a lot of things in the future that this district will be embarking on, looking at our fleet of buildings, looking at new collaborations. So I just want to, I'm glad that we started this process. I just want to make sure that we just keep focused. We keep focused on those things that they're going to be able to help us out in our 5th year and ongoing in our forecast, because eventually we do have to go to the levy. We do have to ask people for property tax dollars. We do have to ask the state for an allowance. And it's a very, very complicated, not very fair sort of process to fund education. So I just want to thank, everyone here, our staff, and everyone that's put in a lot of work on this issue. And I just look forward to those collaborations. I look forward to us looking underneath every rock, looking at our fleet of buildings, and continuing this work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peretti. Are there any other comments on any piece of legislation contained within our consent agenda this evening, colleagues? Seeing and hearing none. Mr. Treasurer, please call the roll.
Ms. Gibbs?
Yes.
Ms. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Peretti?
Yes.
Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
President Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Vice President Cole?
Absolutely, yes.
That motion carried.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, are there any announcements you'd like to share this evening or any district points of pride you'd like to share? Very briefly. Board Member Gibbs?
Yes. The Innovation and Reform meeting will be held next Tuesday, March 13th, 5:30 at Columbus Downtown High School. If you're interested, please sign up on the website. Would like to thank our guests from Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated and Columbus City Preparatory School for Girls for helping us celebrate Women's History Month. And finally, the Kentucky State University Concert Choir will be here on Saturday, March 17th at 4:00 p.m. at Mount Vernon AME. Kentucky State University is a historically black college in Frankfort, Kentucky. Many of our students attend there, and they do offer scholarships in music. And so if you are interested and you want to hear a phenomenal performance, Kentucky State University will be here on Saturday, March 17th. That concludes my announcements, President Baker.
Thank you, Ms. Gibbs. Any other announcements or points of pride from board members this evening? Mr. Superintendent.
Just real briefly, I attended 2 events today that just filled me with immense pride and joy. The first, our state superintendent, Paulo Di Maria, paid a visit to our downtown high school this morning and spent an hour with our students learning about the programs and learning about the success stories at the downtown high school. And I can just tell you that he was very impressed by our young people, and I was, very impressed and very proud. My chest kind of went out a little bit bigger listening to our young people be so articulate and so knowledgeable about their experiences and why they are at the downtown high school. The second opportunity I had today was to visit with the TEDx Youth at Columbus event that was broadcast not only across this country, but around the world as a part of that celebration that we have every year. And again, I was just immensely proud of our students and what they're doing.
Thank you. And I would like to add that I had the honor and privilege of attending the elementary middle school fair recently, and as always was impressed with our staff and teachers and parents and students who participated in that. It's a great event every year, and I was impressed as always. So if there's nothing else, I'm going to ask the Vice President to offer a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. It is recommended that the Board of Education recess into executive session per Section 121.22 G1 Ohio Revised Code to consider the employment or compensation of public employees or officials.
Second. Moved and seconded. Mr. Treasurer?
Ms. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Peretti?
Yes.
Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
President Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Vice President Cole?
Yes.
Ms. Gibbs?
Yes.
And that motion carried.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. The board will now recess into executive session. We will adjourn from those chambers without returning to these. Have a good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for being here.